Program BelAhdan, the show with an accent for those without one. You know, the immigration and immigrants have been building this country for hundreds of years. We have Professor Ryan Anna here. You know, he's a professor of Humphrey Institute of Public Affairs, University of Minnesota. He's really specialized in immigration and refugee policy, and he's paying attention to what's going on. And you know, we are 21st century, 2014, and we're still talking about immigrants. And it seems like what's going on in the southern border is a little bit different than any other immigrants issue. You know, people came from Europe and we welcomed them, and now the immigrants are a bit different, a very color coming from non-European country. It seems like the country's attitude is really a change. So take us through, how did we get into the fact that 50,000 young children, that they're really escaping violence, escaping a horrible situation, and we're taking this stand, we don't know what to do, and we're trying to reject them, we look at them, they're bringing diseases. We hear really horrible things about this official in Texas. So how did we get to that point?
Well, how much time do we have on the program?
Really.
It's not a simple topic, but we'll do our best.
Yeah.
So I think in 1965 there was some major legislation passed in the U.S. Congress that revamped how we did immigration. We started a reunification system. Around about that time, we started a refugee resettlement policy, largely targeted to immigrants who were coming from communist countries, Soviet Union, et cetera, Cuba. So those two things move forward. And since 1965, we haven't really had any significant changes to how we've done immigration policy in the United States. It's a federal system. States and localities don't have a say in how immigration works. It's a federal policy, and it's more or less static. I mean, there have been some marginal changes in the policy along the way, but it's been in place since 1965. Right? And when we made those changes, Kennedy was president, or had been president. No one thought that it was going to have a dramatic change in who came to the United States. Right? We're coming out of the European migration trend, and of course everything changed, as you pointed out. Immigration from Latin America and Asia increased tremendously, and that has continued over time. Right? The reason I mentioned the refugee policy, that program officially began in 1980, and it's gone forward largely unchanged too. Right? We don't have a lot of modifications.
And the reason that it hasn't changed, because there wasn't an immigration issue, or it's just people didn't think it was that serious?
Why didn't it change? There, I think, are a lot of factors on either side that have kept it in a kind of in a static state. Right? So. I mean, so we have people like agriculture interests and low-scale worker interests that very much want low-wage workers to come to the United States.
So, like in the Hubbard and the South, I mean, we need people, laborers.
We need labor.
We don't need people.
Even within the Republican Party, you can see this bit. The Democrats are a little bit more cohesive on this topic, right? They have some fissures as well, but among Republicans, you certainly have some more business-minded Republicans who are very sympathetic to the business interests, right? We need labor. And then you have other Tea Partiers, you have more far right-wing who are very much opposed. They're very much opposed.
So when people now, civilian, the people, vigilante, go there, take their arms and try to protect our border, that's something new.
Maybe, maybe not. So there's during the progressive era of the United States in the early 20th century, there's a party called the Know Nothing Party.
The Know Nothing? The
Know Nothing Party. They were very anti-Catholic, which meant they were anti-Italian. Many of the European immigrants coming at that time were Catholic. And they were known for being vigilantes. They were known for being very aggressive and violent.
So they were against European Catholic?
That's right.
And where did they go to stop them? In New York?
No, they didn't meet them at the border. They terrorized them in the cities.
Oh, really?
Sure.
But you know, when you hear somebody like Governor Rick Perry, just to hear this, he has a theory. We say, I'm coming to the theory that those children coming to this country to grow up to be Democrats, to vote Democrats. This is crazy talk. This is the head, and he has a national interest and ambition to be, to run for president. But when you have somebody thinking that way, and his lieutenant come, our continuing existence is at risk. It's like existential fight. This is young children that are escaping wars and violence.
Yeah, those sound like media talking points to get the far right wing fired up. Perry has political ambitions, as you mentioned. I think everyone knows that to win the Republican primary, you can't be pro-immigrant. I mean, he learned that the last time, right?
Well, didn't that change the fact they want to get the Latino votes? You're losing about 90% of the Latino votes.
Oh, and they will continue to lose them with that kind of rhetoric.
Can they win without them?
Can they win without them in the future? No. No, they can't.
So it's a doomed...
I think it's a short-sighted strategy, right? But you think about the rational decision within the Republican Party. If you're going to win the primary, you have to go right, right? And going right means being very anti-immigrant in most cases. And then they try to tack back towards the center for the general election, right? But it's hard to take back some of that rhetoric, right? As they're finding out. But anyone who tries to have a more centrist approach, in my estimation, in the Republican Party, can't win the primary. Right? So what are they to do? It's a short-sighted. I mean, the Republican Party is kind of held hostage by this far right wing, the Tea Partiers and so on.
So what drives our immigration policy now? Culture, politics, economy, races, whatever. What drives them? What's the factors there?
Well, some would say that there's nothing driving it. We have this gridlock in Congress. No one is able to make changes. Everyone agrees that things need to be changed, I think. Everyone agrees across the board. They don't agree on the kind of changes they would like to see necessarily, but everyone agrees that changes should happen. But there's such a stalemate in Congress that nothing tends to move, right? I mean, this is not news.
Isn't it international law, let's entertain that a little bit, give those young children that could be legally allowed to this country?
Yeah. That is, I think, a really important question, right? Because the children that are coming, they've grabbed the headlines. If they go through the asylum process, which they are,
they have to have representatives.
They have. This is murky, right? Even the immigration law on asylum in the United States is very complicated, right? Can they go through it without a legal representation? They're not afforded one by the Constitution, is my understanding, because they're not U.S. citizens. And so, how does this work? This is a really crucial question. So, for those that are coming to be granted asylum in the United States, essentially what you need to prove is you have a real well-founded or a fear or actual persecution that you've experienced in your country of origin. Right. So if they can prove that in an immigration court, then they will be granted asylum.
Is this very hard to prove? I mean, it's obviously we know this Costa Rica. I mean, with Guatemala, those
Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras. What is the actual persecution they're facing? That's what the judge is going to ask. Is it because of your religion? Is it because of your gender? Is it because of... So what exactly is the persecution? Or is it just a terrible, violent situation that you're fleeing?
I see. Well, that affects everybody, not just...
That affects everyone. It's not singling out any necessarily one person.
And that will not pass...
It's hard to see. I'm not sure what will be the outcomes there. I think that if many of these youth can claim, and I think rightfully they can claim, that they're being recruited into gangs, I mean, we know that this is happening, then that is something that I think many people may say, yes, that deserves asylum.
Well, it seems like, a lot of our immigration policy is driven by politics, we go and invade Iraq, we have, we destroyed our country, we have millions of refugees, so we'll let some in. Why this is different? That we speed up, all of a sudden we have thousands of Iraqi here, thousands of Somali, thousands of other people that we just raped their country, and why this is not happening in the South? I mean, I read this somewhere, and I can't verify that. But we have a lot of illegal Canadians in this country, but it will not hold the headlines.
Right. I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I think that many people would suggest that, well, at a place like Somalia, which you mentioned, or Iraq, we had a direct military presence, right? We were invading those countries. We were doing different things. at least that we acknowledge, we're not fighting a war in these Central American countries.
Drug wars.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of kind of indirect ways that we are influencing the situation in these countries. And in my opinion, America faces some responsibility for the conditions that are there because of our policies in the Central America.
History on all that.
Of course.
And a politician taking advantage of these young kids.
It's interesting to see how it's going to play out, right? I mean, so just this morning in the Star Tribune, there was an article that reported on Keith Ellison and his position.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating to see this happen because Keith Ellison is talking about we are a compassionate state. We need to support these children. We should take as many as we can. And then you have service providers lining up essentially on the other side saying, look, we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the resources. We're talking about really expensive kinds of care and processes that these children need.
Is the Democratic Party becoming like the anti-immigrants party?
Are they becoming the anti-immigrant party?
It would be. I understand the American party, love for America, all that patriotic. Yeah. But if you would define yourself being anti-immigrants.
No, I don't think the Democratic Party is taking that position. Mm-hmm. I think that the Republicans have staked out that ground pretty well.
No, I mean the Republicans.
Oh, excuse me. I thought you said Democratic Party.
No, yeah, I know.
There is a tension in the party right now, but that is certainly the ground that they've staked out for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know the Tea Party is really affecting what's going on in the Democratic Party. Yeah. So how the Tea Party is going to play out in the next presidential?
In the next presidential election? Yeah. Presidential elections, we have massive turnout. We have the United States has a significantly larger a number of Democrats who are registered than Republicans. I don't see a Republican president winning in the next election. I don't, Tea Party or not. I just don't think it'll happen. No.
Yeah, demographics is against them, huh?
Yeah.
Younger and immigrants.
Well, I mean, think about the last elections we've had, right? It's only one in the last 30 years has a Republican president won a majority of the vote. Not the Electoral College.
Yeah.
Only once in the last 30 years.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Oh. So why are we still insisting on an electoral vote system?
On Electoral College?
Electoral College system. Does it reflect really what's going on?
It's got problems. Yeah. It's not my area of expertise, so I give you my opinion. Yeah. My opinion is it needs to be reformed, but what that reform looks like, and that's going to be a really
do away
big
with
fight.
It. Just let it direct election like everybody else.
I think it may require a constitutional amendment.
Well, I know we are running out of time. This is very intriguing, and I'm sure we're not going to solve it today. But in your opinion, should we send Lady Liberty back to France? There's no use for standing there anyway if we're going to have this policy.
Yeah.
Or we'll move it to Texas.
I don't know if they'll take it in Texas. My hope is that people will come to their senses and this will be resolved in a reasonable way. I think.
You think it would?
That's my hope. I have hope. I'm optimistic that something will happen.
Because that's what this country, is built on. And usually we come to, somebody in England said the American will get it right once they try everything else, right? Well, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Alan Ryan, professor of, interest in immigration here with Humphrey Institute, and we'll have a short break. We'll come back with our next guest. Assalamu alaikum, and God bless you all.